If you're watching this, you're already in too deep. Hit subscribe before this story pulls you under. Trust me, you'll want a way out. The rain hammered against the windshield like a warning, but Detective Mara Quinn ignored it. She pushed the accelerator harder, weaving through the empty industrial streets of Fremantle as the sirens behind her grew louder. Her radio crackled. Suspect on foot, armed, northbound toward the docks. Repeat, armed suspect heading toward the docks. But Mara already knew. She'd been chasing him for 3 days, Elias Ward, a name whispered in criminal circles with the same caution reserved for unstable explosives. Not because he was the most violent or the most ruthless, but because he was the most unpredictable. His trademark heists were precision perfect, but the aftermath was always chaos. And tonight, chaos had reached its peak. She slammed the car door open before it fully stopped, sprinting after him through the mist that rose from the cold water. The distant foghorn sounded like a dying animal. Ward's footsteps echoed against the concrete, but every time the fog shifted, he seemed to appear somewhere else, darting between shipping crates, climbing stacks of containers, disappearing and re-emerging at impossible angles. Then she saw it, movement near a rusted warehouse door. Mara cut left, gun drawn, breathing fast. She approached slowly, listening for his ragged breathing, but instead she heard something else. A soft clink, metal on metal. She raised her flashlight and swung the beam toward the corner. A body lay face down in a spreading pool of dark liquid. Mara's stomach twisted. She knelt, checked for a pulse she already knew wasn't there, and flipped the man over. His eyes were open, frozen in terror, and on his neck, burned into the skin, was a symbol. A serrated circle. Ward's calling card. But the victim wasn't random. It was Raiden Cole, a mid-level gang courier tied to half the syndicates in Western Australia. His death meant something. A message or a threat or both. Before she could stand, a voice echoed from above. "You're late, detective." Mara jerked upward toward the catwalk. Elias Ward stood there, rainwater dripping from his coat, hands raised like a twisted parody of surrender. His face, sharp, angular, almost handsome, was smeared with soot and blood. His eyes glimmered with a mix of amusement and calculation. "You shouldn't have killed him," Mara said. "I didn't," Ward replied. "But someone wants you to think I did." He kicked something over the railing. It clattered to the ground beside her, an evidence bag. Inside was a burner phone. Ward smirked. "There's a message on that. It's for you." He turned, breaking into a sprint along the catwalk's length. "Ward, stop," Mara shouted, chasing him up the metal stairs. But when she reached the top, he was already vaulting over the edge, landing roughly but recovering fast. He bolted into a maze of shipping containers. Mara followed, but by the time backup arrived, Ward and the fog had swallowed each other whole. 6 hours later, the message on the phone was decrypted. It was only 3 words. "No escape, Elias." Mara stared at the screen. Someone wasn't threatening her. They were threatening him. Whoever sent it wanted Ward trapped, desperate, cornered in a game she hadn't been told existed. And then everything shifted. 2 days later, Elias Ward was caught. Not by police, not by federal agents, but by someone else. He was found unconscious in an abandoned farmhouse outside of Perth, bruised, bloodied, and barely breathing. No signs of a struggle. No fingerprints. No weapon. Just a man left like a broken offering on the kitchen floor. When Mara arrived, she was met with a scene that didn't make sense. Ward was lucid, aware, even smiling through cracked lips. "Congratulations," he whispered. "You get to take me in." "Who did this to you?" she demanded. He only shook his head. "Ask me in Casuarina." And that was it. Within 48 hours, Elias Ward, international thief, mastermind, manipulation expert, was sentenced to Western Australia's toughest, most fortified institution, Casuarina Prison, a place designed for one purpose: no escape. But as Mara watched Ward disappear behind the steel gates, escorted by guards armed like soldiers, she felt a chill that didn't come from the wind. He wasn't afraid, not even a little. He walked in with the confidence of a man entering his own territory. And that's when she noticed it, just before the doors shut. A tattoo on his wrist. A fresh one. The same serrated circle burned into Raiden Cole's neck. Meaning one thing. Ward didn't just know the symbol, he belonged to it. And that raised the question Mara had been avoiding. If Elias Ward wasn't the killer in the docks, then who was? And what did they want with him inside the most secure prison in Australia? Because when the Casuarina gates slammed closed, Mara Quinn felt the truth settle in her bones. Someone had forced Elias Ward into that prison on purpose. And she was about to find out why. Inside the cage, Casuarina Prison did not welcome people, it swallowed them. The razor-tipped fences curled like thorns, and the towers stood motionless against the scorching Western Australian sun, each window a dark eye waiting for movement. When Elias Ward stepped through the intake gates, the air felt heavier, thicker, humming with the tension of hundreds of men who knew there was no escape, not in body, mind, or soul. Some prisoners entered Casuarina terrified. Others entered furious. Elias entered thinking. Detective Mara Quinn watched from the observation deck above the yard, her clearance pulled from a favor she wasn't sure she should have called in. Ward was now in the highest risk unit, where the most violent offenders were kept under near military surveillance. But as she watched him walk across the concrete yard in fresh issue greens, she saw something unsettling. He moved like he already knew his way around. Elias Ward didn't scan for threats. He scanned for faces, specific faces. Inside Unit 5, where the worst of the worst were housed, guards stayed close, alert, hands near their radios. Rumors had already begun circulating. That Ward had ties to an underground network, that his robberies weren't solo jobs, that he'd been working under someone, or for someone for years. Mara knew better than to believe hallway gossip, but something gnawed at her. Someone wanted Elias inside this prison, and she needed to know why. Ward sat silently in his cell, staring at the concrete wall like it held secrets. His new cellmate, Lucas Brandt, a mountain of a man with scars like blueprint lines across his arms, studied him with equal curiosity. "You're the bloke from the docks," Lucas muttered. "Cops say you killed that courier." "I didn't," Ward replied without emotion. "Doesn't matter." Lucas leaned back on his bunk. "Whoever did is in here. Trust me." Ward didn't respond. But the way his jaw tightened told Mara, watching through the narrow glass, that he already knew. That evening, the yard buzzed with tension thick enough to taste. Gangs clustered in corners. The enforcers, the smugglers, the lifers who had carved out territories like miniature kingdoms. Elias walked through them like a ghost, drawing eyes, whispers, suspicion. Then a man stepped in his path. Jonas Krell, a hardened veteran of Casuarina's most secluded unit. Cold eyes. Tattoos fading into the color of old stone. A man whose reputation alone kept guards on alert. He smirked. "You're the genius thief." Elias didn't answer. "You're also the one they dragged in like a half-dead dog. Whoever left you at that farm wanted you alive." Jonas leaned close. "You know why?" Ward's silence stretched long enough to feel dangerous. Jonas grinned. "Because something's coming, and you're the key." Before more could be said, a guard shouted, ordering the yard back in line. Jonas winked and slipped away, leaving Ward alone with a truth Mara could practically see forming behind his eyes. He was being hunted even here. That night, alarms blared. Mara raced down the corridor toward Unit 5 as guards yelled into radios. "Fight in the showers." Multiple inmates. The scene exploded with violence, shouting, fists, water spraying from broken pipes. But at the center of it all, two men pinned Elias Ward against the tiles, one holding a shank, the other covering his mouth. Mara grabbed a guard's flashlight and hurled it with precision. It clanged against the attacker's wrist, sending the shank skittering. Within seconds, tasers and cuffs were deployed, bodies restrained, screams echoing off the walls. Elias knelt on the floor, soaking wet, coughing. Mara crouched beside him. "Someone inside wants you dead." "Tell me who." He lifted his head slowly, water dripping down his bruised cheek. "Not dead," he whispered. Silenced. "Why?" Ward's eyes locked onto hers, sharp, calculating, and full of something that struck her as fear wrapped in strategy. Detective, the symbol burned into that man at the docks is older than my crimes. Older than this prison. It's not a gang sign. It's a contract. A contract for what? Control. He leaned closer, lowering his voice until it barely existed. Someone used me. Someone powerful. They're wiping out every loose end. Mara's pulse quickened. So you're a loose end. No, a faint, chilling smile formed. I'm their last witness. Before she could respond, a guard approached, informing her that Ward would be placed in temporary isolation for protection. As they escorted him away, Mara's instinct screamed. Isolation wasn't protection. It was vulnerability. And if someone wanted to reach Elias Ward, the cell meant to keep him safe was the easiest place to do it. Mara stepped back, watching the heavy steel door seal with an echo that rang down the corridor like a warning. Somewhere inside these walls, hidden behind bars and shadows, lived the person who orchestrated every step of this nightmare. And they were not done. No escape at Casuarina Prison. The riot alarms were still echoing through Casuarina's concrete arteries when Damon Rourke realized the walls around him were closing in, not physically, but in every other way that mattered. For years, he had navigated this maximum security maze like a man playing chess with life itself. Every move precise, every ally chosen with caution, every secret buried, so deep even the guards didn't know where to dig. But now everything he had built, the quiet influence, the coded network, the uneasy alliances, was collapsing with terrifying speed. The moment Tarek was found dead in the laundry room, throat cut in a way that looked ritualistic, the entire prison snapped into lockdown. Rumors detonated like grenades. Some whispered that Damon ordered the hit. Others swore it was revenge for the testimony Tarek was preparing to give investigators. Testimony that would have exposed smugglers, guards, and half the prison's underground economy. But Damon knew something no one else did. Tarek hadn't been killed for talking. He had been silenced because he finally uncovered the truth. Someone inside the prison was setting Damon up. And whoever they were, they wanted Damon buried deeper than any cell block. Now, standing in the dim interrogation room with two detectives glaring at him, Damon understood the stakes. Why did he come to you? Detective Fraser demanded. He didn't, Damon said calmly. He was running from someone. Someone like you? No. Someone who doesn't want you to find the truth. Fraser didn't buy it. His partner, Detective Vale, leaned forward. He had your name written in his notebook. Last thing he ever wrote. That's not a coincidence. Damon almost laughed. In this place, nothing is coincidence. And nothing is what it looks like. But no amount of talking would change what came next. Damon was dragged back to his unit and placed in a single cell in the highest security wing, the same tier that once held gang leaders, international traffickers, and a man who stabbed a guard with a toothbrush sharpened to a needlepoint. It was meant to break a man. Damon had endured worse. What rattled him wasn't the isolation. It was the knock on the door slot hours later. A guard he'd never seen before, tall, shaved head, eyes cold as a blade. You're being transferred, he said. Where? Segregation. I'm already in segregation. The guard smiled, a tight, unnatural smile. Not the official one. Damon's heartbeat slowed. His instincts roared. Something was wrong. Two more guards appeared. None wore name tags. Everything about this felt off. As they escorted him down a deserted corridor, Damon caught a glimpse of something that confirmed his fears. A camera had been turned away from the hallway. Not broken. Deliberately rotated. Whoever ordered this transfer didn't want witnesses. When they reached a steel door at the end of a dead-end passage, Damon made his move. He stumbled, grabbed one of the guard's belts, and yanked hard, sending the man crashing into the wall. The second guard swung at him, but Damon ducked, drove his shoulder into the man's ribs, and grabbed his keys. A fist cracked into Damon's jaw, a hard, practiced hit, but he didn't go down. The fight was brutal and silent, the kind that leaves no time to breathe or think. Damon slammed the door, lever down, locking two of the guards inside the passage. He sprinted down the hallway, blood dripping from his mouth, knowing he had less than 30 seconds before someone reacted. He didn't want freedom. He wanted proof, evidence that someone was using Tarek's death to erase Damon from the picture entirely. He found it sooner than expected. Near the administration wing, a door was ajar. Inside was a small office with a table, a recorder, and a stack of confiscated items. One item froze Damon in place: Tarek's notebook. But something was wrong. Pages had been ripped out, replaced, rearranged. Someone had rewritten Tarek's final entries. Damon flipped to the last page, the one detectives showed him earlier. His own name stared back at him, but the handwriting was sloppy, panicked. A forgery. Footsteps thundered outside. Damon pocketed the notebook, slammed the drawer shut, and raised his hands as officers stormed the office with weapons drawn. He didn't resist. He didn't need to. He finally had proof. 3 months later, a bombshell dropped. Several guards at Casuarina were arrested for corruption, smuggling, and orchestrating assaults on inmates. A whistleblower leaked documents linking one guard, the bald officer who tried to transfer Damon, to multiple cover-ups. But the investigation hit a wall when the guard disappeared. No trace. No witness. No explanation. Damon's sentence didn't change. He remained in maximum security. But something else happened. His story spread, first through the yard, then through the media, then through online forums, dissecting every detail of the Casuarina conspiracy. Some called him a survivor. Others called him a mastermind. Truth or myth didn't matter anymore. Inside those walls, Damon Rourke became a legend. And legends don't fade. They grow. Especially when 6 months later, another inmate was found dead, throat cut clean, same pattern as Tarek. And on the floor beside the body was one chilling message written in dust. You blamed the wrong man. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.